Hello, Bambaji here with another Sun Gate transit. On the 27th of November, the Sun is transiting into Gate 9 at 12:23 GMT. This is the taming power of the small, the gate of focus. It is the power of determination and the ability to maintain focus. It is continued experimentation, testing, repetition, and practice, and the power of focus, which empowers understanding over time. This is what the entire logic system demands: continued experimentation and testing, and repetition and practice. It is this power to focus which empowers the entire process. And so the ninth gate, here you can see it's in the red square down there at the bottom. It is in the sacral center. What can I tell you about it? Well, you can see that its harmonic is in the throat center. It's the gate 16. Gate 9 itself is looking down its channel. That sounds really weird, doesn't it? Okay, good start. It's looking at the other end of the channel, which is the gate 52, and that is in the root center. The harmonic, gate 52, which is called keeping still mounting. Together they create the channel of concentration, which is a design of determination. And the polarity, the opposition in the wheel, as you can see it here, is gate 16, which is the gate of skills and enthusiasm up in the throat center. It's also logical circuitry, so they are sharing a sort of a common theme with the sun and the earth, the light and the grounding of that. So let us explore and see what we come to. When we're looking at gate 9, we are looking at one of the format energies. It's a gate that's in the format channel for logical circuitry. And format energies are profound. They are an energy that has a deep impact on the frequency and on the way that the entire collective circuitry operates. And if you have it in your chart, it's going to have an influence over your entire chart. So, and that's whether you have the gate, either gate or the whole channel. So it's a very profound and important energy to have, and it's something that's really worth sort of delving into and finding a little bit out about. It tells us that the entire logical process, the very basis of the logical process, is to be able to sit still and focus. There's a saying, Chinese saying, that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And this is really the nature of the ninth gate. Above the lines in the Rave I Ching, it says the potential that can be fulfilled through detailed attention to all pertinent aspects. This is not a mental perspective. This is pure energy. This is the energy to fulfill the potential through attention. The 52-9 is all about being focused and concentrated. And it is in the ninth gate, in the sacral center, that brings this capacity to stay with the details, step by step. It is the ninth gate, more than any gate, that expresses the truth of what it is to be a generator. No other gate touches more deeply on the generator nature than this gate, because it is the glory of a generator to enter through response into something correctly and not miss a single step. It's not the manifesting generators, of course, but the generators, the pure generators. This is how mastery is built in the generator process and in the logical process too. This is how the generator goes from being a slave to being a builder, to being able to create. That capacity to be able to create is a recognition deep within the generator themselves that they must go through every single pertinent detail. One of the difficulties in format energies comes when they're in a hanging gate, which means that there is no activation at the other end of the channel. This is when the gates in that format structure can become quite depressive. So in terms of the ninth gate, unless there is something to focus on, you can easily become depressed. And unless you have the ability to sit still and focus, you can easily become depressed, perhaps restless or agitated. When the 52nd gate is defined to the power of the ninth gate, the restlessness is transformed into a channeled energy and the depression disappears. It is this power to focus that underlines the importance of this gate. If you carry the ninth gate in your design without operating correctly, without operating out of a response, you do not have a way to enter into something where you're capable of going through the detail step by step. And this is also a really good signpost for you to check in with your own process. If you're having trouble focusing on the detail, did you enter into whatever it is correctly? And there's no judgment here, of course. It's just an opportunity for awareness, for experimentation, perhaps, as it's the logic circuit, which does like to experiment. You can look at something and say, did that work? Okay, no, not really. Okay, so what can I change? How can I make it better? What did I do wrong that I can correct? Because all of that is part of the energy that comes through logic circuitry. And there's nothing more beautiful than the reward that comes to the ninth gate as a byproduct of its focus. The ninth gate has a direct relationship to the fifth gate, which is on the other side of the sacral center. And just as we have circuitry that crosses over in the ajna, we have circuitry that crosses over through the sacral. So the logical format, which is on the right side of the lower part of the sacral, it connects to the upper left side of the sacral through the fifth gate, which is also where we go next in the wheel, actually. And the circuit crosses back to the right side when it gets to the ajna. It's in the ninth gate with its focus for detail that lays the foundation for the pattern that's going to be established by the fifth gate to provide for the right flow in this life and the right collective direction in this life. Because the ninth gate is, of course, enormous importance, from Mr. Wedder. The ninth gate is of enormous importance in our evolutionary development. And yet, when we look at the world around us with some awareness of the way in which the not self operates, we can see that there isn't enough focus. And so often it's the small things that get overlooked in favor of the big things. And that will lead to failure. The logical process in and of itself is determined. It is determined by its complete nature to examine everything down to the fine detail, to test it over and over again until the theory and the formula become successful in practice. If you jump over the details, you're always going to run into problems. And you're not going to be able to provide the collective with a secure future. So the details become absolutely instrumental to the development of a secure society, which is why it's essential for us that the beings around us who carry the ninth gate operate correctly as themselves. Because as they begin to operate correctly as themselves, we begin to focus on the details that will really make a difference in our lives. Gate 9 also has a direct relationship to the 62nd gate in the throat. The 62nd gate is the preponderance of the small, and gate 9 is the taming power of the small. The small refers to detail. These are the two detail gates, and both of them are in the understanding collective logic circuit. Both are mechanical functions within the understanding circuit. In our global cycle that we're in right now, the cross that we're in is a cross that we come to through the taming power of the small, and that is the right angle cross of planning, which I'm sure you will have heard about by now. And taming is a word that appears twice in the hexagrams of the I Ching. Here in gate 9, the taming power of the great is gate 26. So taming always refers to manipulation. This is the taming power of the great in 26, which is able to manipulate the memory. For example, we come to 26 in a couple of transits time, so we'll be exploring that. And then where was I going with that? So the 26 is the manipulation of memory, and it can be very tricky. It's the gate of the trickster. Whereas the 9th gate has the ability to tame the energy and bring it into a narrow focus. It is the gate of the mastery of the energy for detail. The logic circuit is starved of energy. You might remember I talked about this when we looked at the splenic center, and we looked at it going through the gate 18 going up to 48. And whenever we talk about any of those gates within logic, it's always saying there's just very little energy to fuel that logical system, because there's no direct connection between a motor and the throat for this circuit. Unlike in the abstract circuit, where we have the throat connected to the solar plexus and straight through in that experiential way there. So there is plenty of energy there. And yeah, and it's a constraint that they don't have to worry about. But because of this, humanity has difficulty in establishing logic in the world. It has difficulty establishing understanding. It can be quite an ordeal to find the energy for these things. In most cases, the energy for getting logic out is going to be generated. It comes from this channel 952 between the root and the sacral, because the manifesting root, which is what we get on the abstract side with the 3536, that's a manifesting channel that brings the power of the solar plexus up to the throat. On this side, it takes 2 channels to get the fuel from the root up to the throat. And that's the motor that we'd be talking about there, the root there being the motor. So generated logic is different from manifested logic. It's a logic that can only come out of response. And it's a response to a need for logic. It has a different flavor from the manifested way of bringing logic out into the world through informing or through initiating. We'll explore these a little bit more as we go through the week, by the way. So the sun's transit through gate 9 is grounded by the earth in gate 16. Now, this is the gate of skills, the gate of enthusiasm. It's another logical gate, and as I said, it's in the throat center. Above the lines in gate 16, it says the great art of enriching life by the harmonic channeling of energy. This is where the quality of talent is dependent on repetition and experimentation. And this throat gate has a voice which says, I experiment. The logic circuit, the understanding circuit, by its very design, it is so often dependent on others for manifestation, because it has no direct connection, as I said, between the energy sources around it and the throat. The splenic throat connection can only allow for verbal manifestation. Now, since the understanding circuit is about patterns and focus, this gate makes a clear statement about the quality of talent, which is also the quality of logic, because it's that same circuit being dependent on repetition, as I said in the beginning. Constant experimentation over and over that is goaded by a critical capacity to find the perfect expression. The 16 is a very creative gate, and it is one of the 2 ways in which gate 9 can express all those wonderful details that it focuses on. It will either go up through the 515, across the G center to the 731, or it will go to the root through the gate, through its channel 52, and then come up through the 5818, over the splenic center, and then up through the 4816. That's the logic, the way that whole circuit is going to work. And then you've got the bit coming in from the top, but that's not really relevant to what we're talking about here. And as with many of the transits that we've looked at recently, the grounding is in the same circuit. So there is an inbuilt support. There's a kind of common language between the two. And here we have the very necessary expression for the logical detail that is focused on in gate 9. So this is where the sun is shining its light for the next 6 days. If you don't have a defined sacral, then be especially careful around what you give your energy to. You may find yourself being pulled into something that requires you to really focus on something. Or maybe you suddenly find a document on your desk with all the fine detail in it. And it's like, oh, you start combing through that when generally you have no interest in that at all. So it's not that it's wrong at all. There's nothing like that, of course, but it's just being careful of your energy. It's being careful of the forces that are around you and how they are impacting your system. And as always, it's an interesting idea if you have the energy to do it, and if you have any, if it's correct for you to do it, to look at the gate 9 in relation to your own chart. You could put the whole day's transits, all of the moon and all the other planets, you could put those on top of your own chart and see, what are you getting? What are you getting that you don't usually have? Because what is in your natal chart is just that snapshot, and that is what's consistent for you for your whole life. Everything else comes and goes. And even if it's a Pluto transit that's here for years, it still comes and goes. We can become to rely on it because it's around so much, a bit like the background frequency. We're all relying on the cross of Maya and the cross of planning to bring us institutions and to keep us on that transformational journey, and it's going to pass because these things do. So it can be an interesting experiment, seeing that we are in logic circuitry right now. An interesting experiment to have a look. How does gate 9 fit into my own chart? Does it fit in? Maybe you've got the 52 and it's bringing you the channel. How does that feel? If you're a generator, does it bring anything different to you? If you usually are open in the sacral, how does that feel? What do you notice? Because when we have these longer transits, like the sun transit, it gives us an opportunity to just dig in a little bit more if we have the time and the space and the energy for it. I leave you with that. Thank you very much for joining me for this overview of gate 9, and I look forward to going through the lines over the next 6 days with you. And as we do that, as always, we will be going gently. We will be loving ourselves. We will focus on the detail of that. Okay, I'll see you very shortly for line 1. Bye-bye.